formative moment. It's not really that special a story, but there was that HBO special. I think it was the reunion tour, and there was an HBO special, and I watched it with my parents, and I was 12 or 13 at the time. It's the first time I saw anyone perform like that. He did where he introduced the band in a 20-minute. I don't even know how long the rendition was of 10th Avenue Freeze Out, and it was just so different. Just the idea of seeing him live, I became obsessed. I went to some tours with my parents, and then when I went to college, I started just going by myself to every show that I could go to.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Set Listing Bruce, your podcast all about Bruce Springsteen, his music, and mostly his fans. I am your host, Jesse Jackson, and joining to me today is a new friend. We have Evan Macy on the phone. Evan, how are you doing tonight?
I'm great. How are you?
I am great. So tell us a little about yourself, Evan.
Well, I live just outside of Philly in one of the suburbs near King of Prussia. I grew up in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, Amish country. I went to Temple University where I got degrees in political science and journalism, and via ESPN, the New Britain Herald, Metro Philadelphia. I'm the sports editor at phillyvoice.com, and I also, at 33 years old, I guess I'm a very young Bruce head, fanatic, whatever you guys call yourselves, spring nut.
Yes.
I check all those boxes off. Big music fan, big sports fan, and I like talking about both.
Well, I am excited. I am looking forward. We're gonna talk a little Bruce. We're gonna talk a little NFL, even though our Cowboys and Eagles are not doing very well this season. But as we're recording this, it's the day after the Eagles did win against the Cowboys. So well done, Eagles. Though it was not exactly beautiful game.
It was ugly. I was there last night, and it's nice because I work from home since March. I've been working from home. This is like the third or fourth live event I've gotten to go to. So just like I was sucking it all in, just really excited to have, other peers.
I bet.
Off in person. So it was nice. And the Eagles winning was a bonus for sure.
So I always like to start it with we're going now. How are you doing in the pandemic?
Believe it or not, so I guess the one thing I left out about myself, I'm a big golfer. I'm a golf fanatic. I'm a member at a club near my house, and with the state of the world right now and the work from home, I've found ways to work on the golf course. I'm very shifty, and I guess I'm proud of that. Sometimes if there's breaking news, I'll pull over under a tree, let a group play through. I'll work on with a hotspot in the golf cart. So I actually looked the other day. I've played 84 rounds of golf since the pandemic started, which is, I don't know if I'm proud or embarrassed, ashamed, but my golf game has gotten really good. I've spent a lot of quality time with my wife. We've done renovations around the house, our kitchen, our patio. So I've made the most of it. I miss my family. I haven't seen them in almost a year. Most of them live in Florida, New York, California. But, there's silver linings, and I'm making the best of it.
So I am not a golfer, but I am a podcaster, and I have recorded a blank ton of podcasts during the pandemic. We went. I work in a call center, and so about the middle of March here in Texas, we shut down, and we did not go back in the office till the end of May. So for 2 months. I was working from home, and then we've been back in the office since May with limited staff, and then about in October we went to full staff. But I have done, in fact, my wife always says she can tell how stressed I am by the number of podcasts I do. That the more stressed I am, the more I do
Sure.
podcast and everything, because it's just such a creative outlet for me. So I think playing golf is better physically, it's for better exercise than sitting on my chair talking to people from around the world. But good for you.
It's a good time to have a hobby. That's for
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so I always like to start at the beginning. So talk to me. You mentioned growing up there in Pennsylvania. Um, was your family musical? Was there a lot of music in the house as you were a kid?
Yeah, so my parents are both Long Islanders, Jews from Long Island, everybody in my family, both sides. And growing up, my mom has great Billy Joel stories. She was like the Long Island president of the Billy Joel fan club in the 70s and 80s. She was in the front row for all his homestands at MSG, and so she was a big Billy Joel fan, and my dad was a big Springsteen fan. And he went to the University of Maryland, and I think he saw his first show was the Darkness tour while he was in college uh,
Okay.
in Maryland. And so growing up, that's what was on in the car.
Okay.
There was Billy Joel and there was Bruce Springsteen, and I love both. I've seen Billy Joel a ton. And the only really knock I have against him, not that there's anything wrong with Billy Joel, but he's kind of resting on his laurels. It's like River of Dreams was 1993, and he hasn't really had an impulse to create more music, which is fine. But the fact that Bruce is so productive and has been during my adult life, there's just been, the I'm sure all the listeners know of like the wonderful cycle where you have new music and then you have tour.
Exactly.
You have at the end of the tour where he decides, all right, we did this set list a bunch, well, anything could happen. And
Yeah.
then he goes into hibernation and then it starts again. And I think it's just the live element of Bruce that has just completely changed my life. And I guess my biggest formative moment, it's not really that special a story, but there was that HBO special. I think it was the reunion tour, and there was an HBO special,
Live in New York, right?
and I watched it with my parents, and I was 12 or 13 at the time. It's the first time I saw anyone perform like that. He did uh, where he introduced the band in a 20-minute. I don't even know how long the rendition was of 10th Avenue Freeze Out,
Yeah.
and Light of Day, where he's kind of like rapping off in the middle of the song, and it was just so different. Just the idea of seeing him live, I became obsessed. I went to some tours with my parents, and then when I went to college, I started just going by myself to every show that I could go to.
What I love about that story, Evan, is one of the podcasts I've been doing is songs of your life, and specifically because the sports station here in Dallas, the Ticket, used to do a segment where they did um, biggest show coming to town, and it just gave the morning show a chance to talk about all the concerts coming in, and they would debate on what's the best show that week. And once lockdown happened, they couldn't do that. So they came up with like 11 questions, the bands of your life. What's a band you hate? What's a band you think's overrated? What's the band that made you fall in love with music? And my son said, you ought to do a Springsteen twist. So I did. I came up with the 11 questions, and the premise is you have to answer each of them with a Springsteen song, and you only can use one song once. So like song that
Okay.
made you fall in love with Bruce and great song to hear live can't both be Thunder Road, right? You got to pick.
Right.
So the reason I'm telling this story is they said great song to pick live. I said 10th Avenue Freeze Out, and I specifically mentioned the live in New York version. I mean, that's almost a concert right
Yeah.
there. Like
Yeah.
like that would be a festival set list. That
Yep.
20-minute, like if they were doing a festival, that would be it. And you get the whole experience about like, with the band and the story. And so I totally could see how a young music lover would just like, I've never seen anything like this.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Um, so when you started getting older into high school, did you go through a stage of rebellion? Did you, or Billy Joel and Bruce have always been kind of in the back of your mind, music you love, even though as you explore other genres?
It's so funny. I wouldn't call it a rebellion. I kind of have two completely not conflicting, because in my mind they're very, very complementary, but very, very different genres of music I grew up
Yeah.
with. And the other one would be punk rock and emo music from the mid 2000s. I
Okay.
have no idea how many of your listeners are in my age group and would recognize Taking Back Sunday, Saves the Day, Say Anything, Jack's Mannequin, Brand New, uh, bands like that. And I would go to concerts every week. There was a local club in Lancaster called the Chameleon Club, that probably held, I don't know, 600, maybe
Yeah.
800 people, and bands would come through on the circuit. And this was during the Bush years, and it was all of this great punk rock, rebellious music against Bush. I never lost an interest in Springsteen. It was just Springsteen was like the thing that me and my dad do.
Yeah.
And then I have all my high school buddies and my college buddies. We're all into the same music. We've all gone to tons of shows, Warped Tour, music festivals, stuff like that. Oftentimes I'll compare in my mind, like, oh, this doesn't, hold a quarter to a Springsteen show.
Sure.
It's beyond comparison, and sometimes you wish there's a different band on stage. But I've gone to a lot of concerts, and both of those genres of music are really, that's it. I mean, those are the two things I listen to 24/7.
Evan, it's funny because if you aren't careful, you can you have to, at least in my mind, separate it. For example, you know, um, we went and saw James Taylor, my wife and I, and James Taylor, great singer, songwriter, classic music, 90-minute show, and I'm like, and I realized that is a good show standard, but you're like, and you knew, like, we've gone to, my son loves, he went to school in East Texas, so he got a flair for country music. So big Brad Paisley fan, right? And you go to this and you're like, it's the same set list every night.
Yeah.
It's, it's an hour and a half.
Not even that. It's an hour and hour, just over an hour before the encore, and it's just like,
right.
Just getting warmed up.
Yeah, and you, and I've been that where, and the band will say, oh, we're gonna do something special for you tonight, and they won't. Now, I shared this earlier in a previous podcast. One year, Billy Joel had come to Dallas, and it was around December. It was in the December timeframe, and he brought out like a music book, and he did 2 or 3 Christmas carols, and I thought it was really cool because you could tell they had not really rehearsed. They were just grabbing it, and our friend Andrea's like, I didn't pay $80 to have Billy Joel sit there and do "Oh Christmas Tree."
Right.
While I, on the other hand, was like, no, this is great. I love the spontaneity. So I think that's kind of cool. You've got two very different genres, both near to your heart, but they kind of speak. Do you think they speak to different sides of your personality?
I mean, they call it emo music and people make fun of it, people whining and complaining and stuff like that. But really, in my mind, that's like Springsteen is such a big influential part. Andrew McMahon is the lead singer of this band I love. Well, Something Corporate and then Jack's Mannequin. He's been in a bunch of bands, but he plays the piano, and it's kind of a softer punk rock band. And I've seen him cover "I'm on Fire" in concert a couple of times, doing his take on it, like just kind of like a piano led version. "I'm on Fire" is an emo song.
Yeah, I agree.
It's just if you interpret the lyrics, I mean, maybe the way that the music is performed is different, but it comes from just the same place in my mind. It's like this music that a lot of the lyrics in some of the punk music I listen to are a little dark, or they're a little depressing. And when people confront me with that, I always say that, like, hearing somebody articulate the way that I'm feeling is freeing. And a lot of really good emo punk rock bands do that. And Springsteen is the king of being able to do that. The way that he's able to articulate things you don't even know that you're feeling, and the way that it's just, I think that's the thing that ties it together. That's, I guess, what I look for in music, because face it, 90% of the time you're listening to music, it's in earbuds, or you're driving in your car. It's a personal experience. And so if it's something that I can relate to, then it's the most enjoyable way to enjoy music.
Yeah, I think that's a really insightful statement, and it is true. You know, it, I think that we as Springsteen fans, may overemphasize this, but I think it's true. He is very influential among a lot of genre, and Tougher Than the Rest is pretty much a country music song, right? Highway Patrolman. If you hear Johnny Cash do Highway Patrolman, you go, okay, that was a Johnny Cash song that just Bruce happened to record. So yeah, I think so, and I think that's when you think about, right, and I'm drawing a blank, the guy who wrote Dream Baby Dream, right? The story
Yeah.
is he asked them to play the Bruce cover at his funeral. So yeah, I think really well done. I always like to preface this. Now, I saw your list before we hit record, so I know you've seen Bruce multiple times, but I always like to preface this that the amount of times you've seen Bruce live is not a fair barometer of how big of a fan you are. There's a lot of things that drive the amount of times: your age, your economic situation, where you live. If you're a 28-year-old guy growing up in New Mexico, it's going to be a little bit tougher than if you are a 50-year-old guy in Jersey, or a 65-year-old guy in Jersey. But for the record, have you counted how many shows you've gone to?
I tried to count the best that I could. I keep ticket stubs. I looked at those, and I came up, if you include everything. So I saw him on Broadway twice, and I saw him twice campaigning for Barack Obama.
Okay. Yes.
3 or 4 song set. So if you include both of those, I came up with 28.
Very nice.
Yeah.
And I did tell you before we hit record, my boss time, and I'll email you the link. It is a database where you can go in there, and it shows every tour. You can pick the shows you've gone to, and then behind the scenes, it does all the database, and it'll tell you what song you've heard the most, what songs you've heard the least, what are tour premieres you've seen. So it's a lot of fun. And for what it's worth, I would count the shows of of the campaigns as well. So any concerts that stand out, or any stories you want to share about some of the shows?
I have so many stories.
Okay, good.
A lot of them will make me sound very cheap, or
okay, nothing wrong with that.
But most of them center around that, I guess. 2 of them that are kind of around that same theme. I know that my parents, when I was growing up, they had an advertising agency, and they were able to parlay that occasionally into box seats to things with the network bought ads with. I guess that's antiquated now, but I was lucky enough to take advantage of that. So I'm looking at my list here to make sure that I get the right tour. I'm pretty sure that it was the Working on a Dream tour. He did a stand at Wells Fargo Center, whatever it was called 10 years ago. And one night, the first night, my mother got the box seats, so we went, and it was fantastic. And the next day, completely spur of the moment, my dad and I decided that we would just show up and buy from a scalper and get in.
Okay.
Which we did. Upper level, probably third to last row, but we had our tickets from the night before. Okay. So when you get into the arena, there's the escalator that gets you up to the club level. And so once we were in the door, we put our thumbs on the date, we held the tickets up, and they let us onto the suite level. And the only problem was we didn't really have a suite to go into. So we made up a backstory, and we went into, I think it was the Comcast box. Mm-hmm. We made up a story for why we were there. And unbeknownst to me that this is a common practice, they were handing out, and you probably can't see it. We're on Zoom, and on my wall, there's a handwritten set list. They were handing out set lists in the box that we happened to choose before the show, I guess because somebody was a friend of a friend or a family member of a friend. So this was just like the greatest luxury of my life. I paid $40 for a nosebleed 5 minutes before the show, and then I'm up in a box with free food, looking at the handwritten set list, knowing who's going to play next. And now, I mean, it's pretty common that you're able to, on your phone, be able to pull up yesterday's set and know
exactly.
But in 2009, I know it's not like the 1980s or anything, but this wasn't something that people did. So that was a really exciting experience. And then I guess similarly, and let me just get this one out.
No, I'm loving this.
At Hershey Park Stadium, they played, and I'm looking, and I'm pretty sure it was the High Hopes Tour. Yeah. So it was the High Hopes Tour. We had Hershey Park tickets. We went to Hershey. Actually, first, we hid behind the bushes at Hershey Park Stadium to hear him do his set list. I have videos where I held my phone camera.
Where he's doing the sound check, right?
He's doing the sound check, and that was really cool. We didn't have tickets. We went to Hershey Park, my dad and I, and we decided we had lawn chairs. We would just kind of sit in the parking lot and listen. So a few minutes before showtime, just for the heck of it, we decided to walk around and once again see what the scalpers were doing. And I don't know how to feel about this, but there was a kid, 14 maybe, who had 2 tickets. Very unusual. It didn't seem like a kid that age would swindle us.
Yeah.
And we asked him how much, and he said $20. And we said, each? And my dad takes out 40. He said, no, $20 for both. Give him the $20 instantly. And we go in without even looking at the seats. And they just keep bringing us up and up and up until we're in the pit. So for $10 a piece, we saw the High Hopes Tour from the pit. My dad's a huge Springsteen fan. He's not wild about the pit. We usually try to get the lower level seats. So he was kind of chilling, leaning against the back of the barricade, and I decided to go on an adventure and kind of wiggle my way up. I remember seeing back streets from, 10 rows up. I kind of pushed my way up for like a little half hour to see what it was like, because I had never been in the pit before. Watched the end of the show with my dad, and I'll tell you that since that show, I've been pit only for all the shows I've gone myself.
Yeah.
So those are 2 of my favorite stories. And,
those are both great stories.
Not really Bruce related, but
no. It's the part of going to the show is the excitement, and what I'm sitting here listening, and I'm as I'm worried, like, oh my goodness, for only $20, they're fake tickets. Oh, what are they going to happen? I'm anxious for you now, but you go, it's $20. Okay, if it's bad, it's bad, right?
It's really, and I think that it's a horrible way to put it, but I really think if you want to see Bruce and you have a little bit of money, you can get in. I also had an experience. This is really bad. I lived up in West Hartford, when I worked at ESPN for a couple of years, and he played at Mohegan Sun.
Right.
And I bought tickets off Craigslist, and I had done Craigslist a bunch before without any bad experiences. And it turned out that these were fake. They wouldn't let us in.
Okay.
And I was out $600. I was standing in a casino out $600. I haven't even laid a bet yet.
Yeah.
And so I didn't know what to do. And I went up to like the ticket booth, and I could hear the band playing. They opened with Van Halen's Jump. I was hearing it from the ticket booth.
Nice.
And I told them my sob story, and they said, oh, we have tickets available. And I was like, are you serious? And they said, yeah, you have to pay face value, but like Bruce always has tickets available until the concert starts. I had no idea. So I paid whatever, $150 each. Yeah. To get into and it ended up being, a couple rows behind the stage, and I missed 2 songs. It cost me about $1,000 for tickets.
Yeah, because
but I got in, and you win some, you lose some, I guess.
Yeah, first off, it just irritates me in like that someone would do that, right, to another fan, but they're not true fans. They're just out this for money, but that's great. I'm also smiling because I was at the show for the NCAA tournament that was at Jerry World, and Bruce played a festival, and I was telling the story. He opened with Jump,
Yeah.
and so, and I
After
think,
that, I guess
yeah,
he liked it. He
exactly,
brought that.
yeah, that is awesome. Well, I want to get us off Bruce just for a minute. I want to get back to, or kind of talk a little bit about why did you always know you wanted to be a writer, and did you always know you wanted to write about sports?
That was, I guess, I don't know, right place, right time, a little bit of talent. I don't know. In high school, I'm 5'7". I'm not the most athletic kid.
Sure.
And all my buddies were athletes. My best friend was the quarterback, the center fielder, and the point guard. And all my friends were wrestlers and stuff like that. And so I guess to kind of hang around them and have a reason to go to the games, I volunteered to write about sports for a high school newspaper. And eventually I was able to edit it. I was the editor-in-chief, and I used that to get like a partial scholarship at Temple to study journalism. And
Okay.
I wasn't dead set on doing that, but I was able to get an internship at the Gloucester County Times. That's in South Jersey. It's a daily newspaper it was a regional one that's now part of NJ.com. I guess they all merged years ago.
Okay.
But I showed up there with an internship, and they basically said, oh, great, you're covering Gloucester Catholic versus Pittman baseball. Here's the address. And that was my first day. And I never covered an event, and I didn't know how to keep score. I stopped at Walmart on the way to the game and got like a score book for baseball. And I just taught myself. I learned on the fly. I made notes on what interview questions to ask. I went back to the newsroom and I wrote a story completely cold off of that high school game. And I don't know. I loved it. I was hooked. That internship was life-changing. I did it for 6 months. And then this was in 2009. I was a junior in college. The Philadelphia Phillies were good. They won the World Series in 2008, and then in 2009, they couldn't put me on with a full-time gig at this job. So as a reward for being an intern, they let me go cover a Phillies game for the first time. It was the Phillies versus the Cardinals. And I was in the press box. I was in the locker room. I wrote like 3 or 4 stories off of one baseball game because I was so excited. And it was just kind of it was tantalizingly great. It was just a team.
Sure.
And then, not to talk too much about myself, I got a job out of college working for the Pennsylvania Democratic House Campaign Committee. That's a long way of saying that I was like the assistant speechwriter and researcher for the Pennsylvania State House candidates running for office. In 2010, Democrats got their butts beat everywhere. Yep. And I thought that would get me a job. It didn't. So I was unemployed, and my parents, and I know this sounds made up, my parents' house burnt down. The house I grew up in October of 2008. So I was unemployed, living in a hotel room with my parents. 2010, living in a hotel room with my parents. And so I decided to apply for every single job that was available to get the heck out of my parents' house.
Sure.
I got hired at the New Britain Herald as a high school sports writer for $25,000 a year. I got a little 1-bedroom apartment that was $1,000 a month. I barely was able to make enough money to pay for food,
sure.
But I needed to get the heck out of Dodge. And, I just kind of worked my way up and made a little bit of a living there. And it was a really good home base in 2012 because
sure.
in my research, that's the year that I went to see Bruce at TD Bank, at the TU Center in Albany, at the Prudential Center in Newark, at Gillette Stadium, at the XL Center, and twice at Citizens Bank Park. I came back to Philly. And I realized that being in Connecticut, I could get to Boston, I get to Albany,
exactly.
I get to Jersey, yes. I get to New York. So that's like a great place to be for Springsteen. And then luckily I was able in 2014 to come back to Philly and get a job doing what I was doing for a Philly publication. And I was able to get back close to my parents and my sister and everybody. And so that's where I am now.
That's neat. So I want to go just a little bit. And I know we talked about, you said that you're used to doing sports podcasts and you're excited about Bruce, but I can't let you be here without talking just a little bit. I'm fascinated, March, everything shuts down. You're a sports writer and all of a sudden sports is dead. Like what what were your thoughts about that, and how are your paper doing? Like when all of a sudden, like the NBA shuts down and all of a sudden it's dominoes. Talk a little bit about that.
That was a crazy day. I'm going to get the date wrong. It was March, I want to say 12, 13, 14.
Yeah.
I was covering a Flyers game, and I was at the Flyers game, and it was the day before the all of the NBA shut down, before Rudy Gobert got it and everything went to
Yeah.
hell. So I was at the Flyers game, and nobody knew anything about the pandemic, about the virus.
Right.
I remember after the game is over, everybody goes into the big freight elevator. It goes down to the underbelly of the stadium. You go into the locker room. And I remember getting into that elevator with 40 people like this, huddled around each other very close. And that's the minute I knew there's no way that we can keep doing sports, because look how close I am to everybody. And I was counting down the days after that Flyers game to make sure I didn't have it, because I was scared. I was in an arena with 20,000 people. So luckily I didn't get it, and everything shut down. And it was an opportunity to do a different kind of work. We did a lot of ranking of things, of making brackets for things. I was, instead of writing articles that took 30 minutes, I was doing 6-hour research papers on the 10 worst trades in Philly sports history. And luckily, with everybody being in the same shoes, we were able to kind of retain our page views from having content like that. And I was able to keep my job. And it was a very weird situation for me, because I knew that sports coming back wasn't safe, and I was kind of a moral disposition that if this happens, this is bad, but also it's my livelihood. I need them to come back. So the NBA bubble was helpful. The Sixers sucked pretty bad. I know the Mavericks had a fun little run, but they didn't get very far either.
No, but we did get, at least we got Luka, and my son and I, he had ended up moving in with us last summer, and then he was just about ready to go get his own place, and then the pandemic happened. So he ended up moving out in September, but we were both just so excited that it had been so many years since the Mavericks had been good. The Rangers are never good. The Cowboys are just never good. And so the idea that the Mavericks were on actual playoff and actually won a couple of games, was pretty exciting for us. And we were like, it's okay. We got bounced in the first round. At least it was competitive. So, yeah. We were very disappointed that, Texas had, Globe Life Field, right? We're going to have this brand new ballpark. We were all excited, and you ended up, I guess it's cool that the World Series was here, but it was just kind of sad that you didn't get to go enjoy this new ballpark.
Yeah, it's a different landscape. And at the Eagles Cowboys game back on Sunday, 6,000 fans. It was weird. It was very weird.
I was going to ask you about that because, good old Jerry Jones, of course, immediately said that people were going to go to the Death Star. And so he's, and we have been sarcastic about, yes, the game sucks, but Jerry's going to be all happy that he's leading the league in attendance. But it seemed weird, right? Like to have that few of people, especially a Sunday night game, all cliches aside, but when Dallas and Philly play, forget the records. It truly is. These are two teams that have had great battles in the past.
Yeah, it was weird. I don't know what the operating cost is to have one of those guys in the yellow outfit in every single section and have is open and security people. I mean, with 6,000 fans, it's got to be almost a net wash. So from that standpoint, I don't know how much I mean, maybe they make money from selling beer or something.
Well, that's funny, Evan, because there have been a lot of bad Texas Ranger teams. And when Chris was younger, Chris is my son's name, he and I and my brother-in-law, his uncle, um, we three bought mini ticket plans, right? And so we three would go to, like 10, 12 games for 3 or 4 seasons in a row. And there would be like a midsummer game where you'd go, there is hardly anyone here. And I, as a businessman, like, what is the nut they have to hit
Right.
just for the cost? They're like, okay, they got to have ticket takers, they got to have people working the certain concession stands, you've got the ushers, all that before they've sold, like one beer, one pretzel. And so I think I hadn't thought about that, but I imagine that's got to be crazy.
Yeah, I'm with it. The only another relevant thing in North Jersey, one of the bands I mentioned, Andrew McMahon,
Yeah.
he's solo now. He plays the music from all his other stuff. They did one of those drive-in concerts,
Right.
and it was. Sorry, I just got a Slack message. Let me quit out of that.
That's okay.
Yeah, it was one of those drive-in concerts where you sit in your car and it's every other parking spot, and the stage is way the heck up there, and there's video screens. And it was really weird to be at something like this thinking like this is really the best I'm going to get for 2 years, and it's not really that fun.
So I was lucky enough about a month ago, Maureen Van Zant sat down with me and talked to me via Zoom, and she had talked about she had attended a concert that was a socially distanced concert that everyone had their own little. They had plexiglass between the
Yeah.
seats,
I think
and
Southside Johnny did a few of those in the Jersey
yeah,
area. I wasn't able to go, but
and she said it was incredibly unsatisfying
yeah,
because
that's
even though
really
it's
cool.
good to hear the music, you didn't have that sense of joy and that fellowship and everything.
It wasn't a shared experience. It was
Right.
my wife and I and one of my best friends, like the three of us just kind of hanging out, listening to music.
Right.
It's not a concert atmosphere. It's depressing to think about. It really is.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've got to ask you, and then we'll move back to Bruce. Thoughts on the Philly-Dallas rivalry over the years, and were you covering Philly when they won the Super Bowl?
Yeah, I was there in Minnesota. That was a really fun opportunity.
That's exciting.
It's like -10. You leave the stadium and then you're an icicle. That was I've ever been in my life was leaving that game. But yeah, that was. And let me tell you, not to go off on a tangent, but
No,
um,
please.
I
I'm
was
all about tangents.
I was the sports editor of Metro Philly, so I was at the Super Bowl, and we had it was a print Philly Voice where I am right now. We're just online, but Metro Philly was a print publication, so we had a deadline. So I had 6 articles simultaneously going. I had a game story if they won, a game story if they lost. I had a column if they won, a column if they lost. I don't even remember what the other ones were. So I would literally pick my head up, look at a play, and then put my head down and type until they
Yeah.
snap the ball again. I gave myself a little 15-second pause, take it all in. But it was the hardest I've ever worked in my life. And I'm not complaining because covering
No.
a Super Bowl is incredible. And
Yeah.
there were parties and stuff leading up to it that were really fun. But that game was, oh my God, I probably wrote 5,000 words. And
Yeah.
only about 2,000 of them even made it to print because the Eagles, I don't know if you remember, it was the Eagles-Patriots game. That was a shootout that they won 41-33.
Yeah.
Really could have gone either way, and those are the worst games. When you're a sports writer, I like Philly winning. I grew up a Philly sports fan, but with my job, you root for the easiest and quickest outcome.
Yes.
You
Yes.
really, really do. The Sunday Night Football at halftime, I didn't really know what the heck I was doing, but when the Eagles were able to break it open, I was like, all right, great. I can go to work. I don't have to wait for the end.
Right.
And then you can go home early. So that's what you like as a sports writer. I don't remember your initial question, so I'm sorry.
No. That's perfect. I was just talking about any thoughts about the Dallas Philly rivalry over the years, and the in from your perspective, because I will tell you, we are very frustrated with Jerry here in Dallas. It just and I know all the cliche about he loves the win, but it just appears. And my son is especially frustrated. He was born February of '89. He will quickly tell you, Evan, he was a Landry baby. He was born during the Landry era. 2 weeks
Wow.
after he was born,
Yeah.
Landry got fired. He has grown up watching the Cowboys, and he is now 31. He barely can remember. He was like, 4 or 5 during the Aikman years. And all he can remember is just mediocre football. So just thoughts on just the rivalry, Jerry Jones, whatever you want, and then we'll get back to Bruce.
I mean, not to like toe the politically correct line here, but like there are two very tortured fan bases that are diehards, and they have a lot in common, Philly and Dallas fans. They really, really do.
They do.
I think if you're in a fantasy league with a Cowboys fan or an Eagles fan, you can get really good value on players not on those teams because those fans overvalue their players. They think they're better than they are. I've really done my job. I started covering the Eagles in 2014. I've covered Carson Wentz and the Dak Prescott thing almost my whole career covering them, and that's like the most fun. I mean, I hated seeing Dak. I mean, they would have absolutely killed the Eagles with Dak Prescott. And it's funny because I would not have admitted before this season that Dak was better. And now I think he is, but now he's hurt. Wentz is having a pretty bad season, but he's staying healthy. It's crazy swings for these two quarterbacks and teams.
My son was we all were, but Chris was especially when Dak was hurt. He just was just heartbroken. And I also think, and it's easy for me to spend someone else's money, right? But you're sitting there going, do you remember how many bad Cowboy quarterbacks we went through before we stumbled on Romo? And argue whatever you want about Romo, he kept them competitive. And now then you get another quarterback and like, well, we'll just franchise him. Like, no.
Yeah, I really never understood what the apprehensiveness was because he's so talented and I don't know, just not having a question mark at quarterback. I mean, injuries aside, there's nothing you can do about
exactly. Yeah.
And you don't have to worry about that. You can be a lot better with everything else on your team because the quarterback's the most important thing and you can kind of focus on everything else. So the Cowboys are kind of, in a way, depriving themselves of that security because they don't technically know who the long-term quarterback's going to be, which means that they need an insurance plan, and obviously they don't have one. They didn't think Dak would get hurt like this, but it's really difficult to kind of plan long-term because you want to be able to plan on – you want to try to win the 2021 Super Bowl. I mean, they're not going to win this year, so what can they do to get in a position for next year? And technically they don't have their quarterback locked up for next year. Yeah,
it's very, very crazy. All right, let's get back to Bruce. You wrote – and this is how we found each other. You wrote a letter to you column. So talk to me about that.
I just was wild about the album. It's I don't know what it is. I don't know if the music's better or maybe I've changed. But Western Stars really, really moved me. And like, I just could not stop listening to it. I don't know if everybody else is the same, but there's kind of like this honeymoon period with a new album where just like you listen to it nonstop. And then you get to the point where you're like, all right, I'm good. And it's in your rotation, but it's not the only thing you listen to. And so, like, that period for Western Stars for me was just almost until now. I mean, I still haven't the live version. I saw the movie in theaters, and then
so did I.
There's the live version of it on Spotify. I haven't even listened to the album version because I love that live version. And I feel like this is just as good, if not better. It's just unbelievable. I guess when I was younger listening to classic Springsteen, I didn't have as much of a connection with it. And I know I'm younger and I'm not dealing with death of people of my age group. And I'm not, I don't have any kids yet or anything like that. But for some reason, it's just like hearing him get older and doing it in a way that's productive and inspiring. It kind of makes me more at ease with the fact that that's what my life is headed for. I know this is a little deep, but I guess to lead me to that, it's every now and then it's just like there's something that you're not assigned, and there's no reason for it to be written, but you just have to get it out. And that was something that I just kind of, I woke up one morning, and I think my wife was going to a girls' brunch, and by the time she came back from brunch, I had the whole column written. And I don't know if anybody would read it, but I just had to get my thoughts out there. And I've never written an album. I've written sports articles. So instead of doing a professional look at what the music was, I kind of broke it into categories of the best things about the album, just because that's how I like to read things.
Sure.
I'm proud of it. Yeah.
You should be, and I really liked it a lot. Just to kind of give you a little feedback, I absolutely agree with you. I adored Western Stars. I loved the film. Was so jealous of the people who got to be in the barn. My wife was like, reached over like, you really want to be one of those persons, don't you? And I'm like, yes. And then later, when they're showing the credits, they get a credit. And I'm like, no, they not only got to be on the show, but they got a credit. They're now in IMDb. They could say. Really cool. So then,
by the way, Springsteen in a movie theater, I'm into it. It was.
Oh
really,
yeah, yeah, great. Absolutely, and it was so beautiful. And then, you're like, okay, gosh, he's 69. 68, 69, Western Stars comes out. Oh my goodness, wow, what is he doing? And now then, he's 71 and Letter to You comes out and you go, oh my goodness, like this is a solid album. And I was listening to a couple of the None But the Brave podcast, one of my podcast brothers, and they were talking about that they had a theory that if this album had come out right after Born in the USA, it would have had massive hits because, radio was different than it is now. Now, and I agree. It is an album filled with great songs. And this weekend, my wife, who is not a huge Springsteen fan, you take turns picking things to watch. And so I watched a lot of MSNBC with her, which I enjoyed. I'm worried about the election too, but so to pay back, she's like, okay, well, isn't there a new Springsteen thing? And I'm like, yeah, let's watch Letter to You. And she came back and really enjoyed the film and liked all the songs. And I think there is a universality to the song. I do not think it is necessarily depressing. It is just kind of, here's where I am now. And I do think that all the band members are realize that the road in front of them is shorter than the road behind them, but that doesn't necessarily mean this will be the last album ever. They, I think they have a future in front of them, but they are kind of checking out where they are now.
And I mentioned this in the column because I have all those DVDs, Blu-rays, whatever you want to call it, the Born to Run one, the Darkness one, the River one, and everybody knows like how insanely legendary his recording sessions were. And like hearing him, what did they do it in 4 days?
Yes.
He's so good. He's so good now. He's such a good songwriter. It's like, I can't compare what I do to him, but like me covering an Eagles game compared to 5 years ago, it's automatic. I'm much better at doing it right now. So just take something that requires a lot more talent, like songwriting, and then make 40 years instead of 5. And it's unbelievable. He's a machine. His brain is trained to make music. And that's what the thing that stood out to me was, it was just so, he picked up songs from 1973.
Yes.
And like, in theory, I'm like, I don't know if that's a good idea. Him singing, I'm 24 years old here, but I can't believe how they work. It's so cool.
Yes.
It's incredible.
And then, I'm watching the interaction of the band. I love the idea that they didn't do, and I think this was Roy Bittan who said, let's not do Beat the Demo, right? Like you usually make demos, and then we have to come in and go, okay, do it better than this. But him just doing the song on his acoustical guitar. And I was fascinated watching them all on their pieces of paper, not iPads, not,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
pads writing down, and, they're putting together all the pieces, and you got to see a little bit of little Steven. And, you know, um, the, the rumor, I mean, the legend is that Steven said he wasn't an actor, but the reason he knew he could do the Sopranos role is that Silvio to Tony was him to Bruce. That
Oh,
it was that
well,
same relationship, right? So he's like, "Oh, I can play this guy. I know this guy."
yeah.
And I do see that on the snippets where you see him talking about, I don't think you need the bridge. I think you can go right here, or you can
Yeah.
speed it up. And all of them back and forth was just really a joy to see.
And Steve's a great songwriter too. I just only once, but I did see Little Steve in the Disciples of Soul once with
Yeah.
all backup dancers and stuff, and
Oh,
it was so fun. He's great too.
we saw it on the first tour, and I had tickets when he was doing the second round. And he ended up getting sick, and he ended up canceling the show. So I was really disappointed. We did get to see that and once again, my wife is like, I'm just watching the backup singers. She goes, that's a whole show in
My
itself.
wife did the same thing. Oh my God, that was hilarious. We had so much fun. We were drinking a little bit, but she was trying to mimic the dance.
Yes,
It was a blast. It was a blast.
absolutely. So are there favorite songs or albums that you and your dad share, or maybe you that have helped you get through tough parts of your life?
Probably the river. I was able to go to. I mean, I have so many Bruce memories. It's
Sure.
I could talk for 5 hours, but going to the river album show with my dad was really really cool. Something about going to Springsteen shows with my dad is like, I don't know if other people can relate to this, but he's my father. But when Bruce comes on stage, we're both the same age. It's crazy. I look over at him and I see however old, an 18-year-old, a 22-year-old. He's singing. He's giving into his
Yeah.
inhibitions. He's smiling. He's standing. We're the same age. He's just like he's young again, or I'm old as well. I don't know what it is, but it's just like when just singing along. I'm trying to think. What's the bridge? Yes, I would, baby. Yes, I would, darling.
Yeah.
That I just have so many memories of that bridge. Just like looking at him in the eye. We're both singing it as loud as we could, like with beaming smiles on our faces, because like this is what we listened to in the car driving to Long
Sure.
Island when I was 12.
Yeah.
And like here we are, like seeing it live, nothing between us but air, and he's an 18-year-old kid again. And that's like, I don't know, it's a really special moment. I hope a lot of other Springsteen fans have it with their dad or their mom or their kids, because it's just so unifying and special.
Yeah. Chris has gone to 2 shows. He went to the first one in Oklahoma City. He had never gone to a show. The only reason he went is like, hey, this will be a good, you know, father-son trip. I'll go. And it was during the River tour. Where they were doing the whole album. And on the way home, and I hit recording on my phone, and we talked like for 30-40 minutes in the car driving, and we kind of recorded an episode, and he shared some interesting points, and one of them he said is that the Cowboys should sign Kevin, Bruce's technation,
Car guy,
because
yeah,
Bruce
yeah.
is throwing the guitar and he never misses. He's
That's
like, the Cowboys could use receivers like that, Dad.
yeah.
The other thing he said is, you cannot play. He said, because the moment Bruce finishes a song, Dad, he's immediately on the next one. There's no time to take a drink. There's no time to take a breath. It's like, if you don't know what the F you're doing, you're going to be screwed, Dad. This guy is saying. So we got a chance to go up to New York to see him after Europe, and came back. And he and I got to see him. And so we got to see it there at, MetLife Stadium. So,
I was at one of those shows.
yeah, we were at the second one.
I don't know
So,
which one was that.
yeah. And, and we enjoyed that. So yes, there is that bond. What I was thinking of is Independence Day with you and your dad. Now it
Yeah.
sounds like you and your dad
I
always bonded.
I
But
never heard that song. First of all, hearing any of the albums played live completely changes them. It's indescribable. But yeah, that song actually got me choked up looking at how intently he was listening to that song. Because I really never, I mean, I knew what the song was about, but I didn't really hear it until I was literally hearing it in the middle of the album with my dad next to me at a Springsteen show, and it really hits you. I would agree with that.
yeah, because Evan, I'm exactly the same story. I didn't have my dad with me, but I knew the song and I was like, yeah, it's okay. And then when he talked about, and you realize that at this point he's in his middle 60s and he's probably older than his father was when Bruce wrote it. In other words, he wrote the song from the perspective of the young man, and now that he's singing it from the father perspective really spoke to me.
Yeah.
And it is one of the highlights of seeing that live. That's great. Any other songs maybe that come to mind, or favorite albums? You already shared how much you loved Western Stars, but
I love. I've seen him so much, and
yeah,
I'm not. When he plays Thunder Road and Born to Run and the hits Hungry Heart, I'm not like turned off, but
yeah,
I'm not as enthused as I am to hear a Backstreets or a Fade Away,
mhm,
or there's just so the I guess the B-sides are songs I really really like. The second half of the Wild, the Innocent, and the E Street Shuffle.
sure.
Um, any song that's over 6 or 7 minutes is probably my jam. I don't know why that is, but it's just like, I don't know, just they're different, they're unique,
So
and rare.
you've seen them a lot of times, but we hope there's going to be a tour again. Are there songs you haven't heard live that you would like to hear that are on your checklist?
I don't know. I've been very, very fortunate.
Okay.
I saw him do Born to Run. I saw him do Darkness. I saw him do The River. I saw him do Born in the USA.
Okay.
I would want to see the last two albums very much live. And then all of the songs that are really rare that he sometimes whips out on tour. I remember my favorite Springsteen show that I was ever at. My best experience was the second day at Citizens Bank Park. I was in the pit. That was the 4 hours and 2 minutes show.
Okay.
On that tour, he opened with New York City Serenade,
Right.
which is the weirdest opener ever, but it worked. And I remember looking at my phone, and it was almost an hour and 45 minutes before he played a song that was written after 1975.
Yeah.
It's weird for me, who at the time was in my late 20s, to like be excited about that. But like, it was just really, really cool. I like it when something, because I'm sure people who listen to this are set list studiers, and
Yeah.
you know the general structure. You know there's a spot where like 2 of 3 songs could be thrown in, but that's why I always like to go to night 2 or leg 2, because
Yes.
he'll get to a point where he throws out the set list and anything can happen, and you cannot describe that to a non-Springsteen fan who goes to concerts, because there's nobody else that does it. I know Pearl Jam mixes it up sometimes. There are some bands that
Yeah.
will mix it up. I've seen emo bands that I love play album shows,
Right.
but it's just like there's nothing off limits. There's songs from the Tracks albums,
Yeah.
from all those B-side, whatever you call them, the unreleased songs. Like
Yeah.
that's the stuff that I absolutely live for. I'm bad on the spot. I could give you 10
No,
songs.
no, no, no. And
That's the general
I
concept song.
that's where the name of the podcast came from.
Yeah.
Because people came to me, and I've been asked plenty of times, like, set lusting, like, does this mean you have sexual feelings for Bruce?
Oh no, I got it immediately.
Yeah, and I guess I knew fans do. Fans immediately get, because as you're following social media and you go, oh my goodness, I can't believe I'm not at that show when he's playing this song, so that's great. what have I not asked you that I should have asked, Evan?
You did a pretty good job. I probably talked your ear off. It's
No, you were great. You were wonderful.
fun to talk, Bruce. I'm so used to answering the same questions about sports.
I bet.
There's
Okay,
so many good
so
ones.
if you can't think of anything I forgot, then we got to ask you the Mary question. So, Jay Armstrong is an honors English teacher in the Philly area, and every year he takes 2 days of the school year, and his honors English class, his seniors, they study Thunder Road as a poem. They go through all the different lyrics. They talk about the imagery that's in the poem. They compare it to Robert Frost, The Road Not Taken. And they talk about the themes. And then at the end of the 2 days, he looks at the class and says, "Does Mary get in the car?" So, Evan, that is your question. At the end of Thunder Road, does Mary get in the car?
What's the exact line? Doesn't he say like, "See Mary climb in," before he says it's a town full of losers? What's the exact wording? Because I'm gonna need to see the phrasing. I thought that it was a given that she gets in the car because they're pulling out of here to win. And then I always thought the outro of the song was kind of them getting onto the on-ramp and driving away. That's what I thought that the reprise was, and then Clarence comes in. So I thought that was them driving. But maybe I heard the lyrics wrong, or I'm thinking of it.
No. So according to, this is the lyrics that I believe are on the record, though I'm pulling it from the internet. They scream your name at night in the street. Your graduation gown lies in rags at their feet. And in the lonely cool before dawn, you hear their engines roaring on. And when you get to the porch, they're gone on the wind. So Mary, climb in. It's a town full of losers, and I'm pulling out of here to win. Now,
That's so funny. I don't look at lyric books, and
yeah.
I mean, I think I've shown I'm a pretty knowledgeable Springsteen fan. I swear to God, I thought it was "See Mary climb in," and that has informed my interpretation of it.
So, and often when he performs it live, he says, "We're pulling out of here to win."
Right.
Your answer is yes, she gets in the car.
I think that the musical reprise at the end, that coda, whatever you want to call it, I think that is meant to be them driving.
Okay.
I really do. I think that's. I mean, there's something about those I don't know if you want to call them bridges or musical interludes, but like when the band comes in and plays, it always speaks to me just as much as the lyrics do, and I really think that's. It just sounds like you're going down the highway. It really does to me. So that's my answer. I thought, because you sent me a little rundown before this, the Mary question, and I wasn't familiar with it. I'm thinking, okay, so there's Thunder Road, there's Meet Me at Mary's Place. I was trying to think of all the different Marys, and I thought you were going to ask me, are they the same Mary? But I realized that's what this was the question was. So
that's okay. Do you want to answer? Are they all the same Mary? I'll take your answer.
Yeah, I think he wouldn't. It's not the best name in the world. I don't think he would use it over and over again.
All right, so I did want to tell you a story that, and gosh, I can't remember who it is now, but one guy answer was very similar to your answer. He said it depends. When it's the full band and the music plays off, she gets in the car because that music is them driving away.
Yeah.
But when Bruce is by himself and he does the very la da 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 da, that's him driving off by himself.
I mean, yeah, that's valid. That's funny. That's funny.
I love that. Yes, that is great. Yeah. I did obviously I ask this every podcast, and I actually, earlier this year, I took about 30 or 40 answers, spliced them all together, and then sent it to Jay, who gave me the original question. And then he spent an hour talking about everyone's answers.
Oh, that's great.
Yes, it is. Evan, this is great. I hope you've had fun. I have just loved talking a little bit of sports, a little bit of Bruce. I'm so glad that you wrote the Letter to You column and that you responded to my tweet. I just appreciate you so much. if someone wants to reach you, how can they?
Sure. I'm on Twitter, Evan_Macy. Macy spelled like the department store. I've tried to get a discount there and it doesn't work. And also I write at pretty much every single day at phillyvoice.com. If you're an Eagles fan, if not, we still cover all the major sports, and maybe I'll think of more Springsteen columns to write. Who knows?
Good deal. So Eagles will win the East?
I think so.
I mean,
Not
just
that
by
I want them to, because if they finish the season with 6 wins and they don't make the playoffs, that's a top 10 draft pick. And if they make the playoffs with the 6-9-1 record, that's the 19th pick. And you're not going to win a playoff round. You're not going to win a Super Bowl. I think they got to think long term, but I think they're probably going to win.
Yeah, I think that tie is going to end up helping them more than you thought it would. I know that as a Cowboy fan, I should want them to like win the division to show something. But when it's this bad of a season, you're just like, okay, let's just play a lot of young people. Let's see what you can do, and then just try to re-rack. So either way, it's going to be fun. Please stay safe. Evan,
Yeah,
take care of yourself. Hopefully we can meet at a show sometime. That would be good.
Keep me in mind if he tours again. I'll do post game. I go to a lot of them.
That sounds good. And I don't know, do you ever go down to Dallas for like the game when things are normal?
We have I'm actually not the primary Eagles writer.
Okay.
So the second guy that goes. So I go to all the home games and playoff games. But my wife's from Houston, so I'm there often.
Okay. Well, if we ever figure it out, we'll meet for a beverage or two. So thank you, sir. Hang tight. Listeners, you be safe. Remember to social distance, wash your hands, wear an effing mask, take care of yourselves, because you know we need to be good to each other. But for now, take care, and we'll talk to you soon. Goodbye. Doing a podcast at times can be a one-way conversation, and I hate that. So please let me know what you like and don't like about the work I'm doing. You can reach the podcast via email at setlistingbruce@gmail.com. The show is on Twitter at setlistingbruce, and my personal Twitter is at jessejacksondfw. We have a website, www.setlistingbruce.com. From there, you can find links to other Springsteen podcasts as well as other music-themed podcasts. We have a page devoted to our own SLB All-Star Band. These are guests who have been on the podcast more than 3 times. There is a link to our store where you can purchase Set Listing Bruce shirts, as well as a Mary Question t-shirt. There is a link to our Patreon page where you can sign up to help support the podcast financially. We have different levels and different rewards based on your support. If you don't have any extra cash, and right now, who does? You can support the podcast by subscribing via your favorite podcast player and leaving us a review. The more reviews we have, the easier it is for people to find us. And please tell a friend about the podcast, especially if they love Bruce or music, because it will make a difference.
You just heard the fun talking, hard rocking, music loving, album ranking, fan thinking, joy spreading, lyric reading, story sharing podcast that is the one, the only Set Listing Bruce. Set Listing Bruce is part of the Southgate Media podcast group. The theme for Set Listing Bruce was written by David Rosen, used by permission.